Can just see Mohammed there. Hi, welcome. Okay, so we started this project in early 2023 as one small international commitment to the sumud, or insistence on enduring presence of Palestinians in the face of an ongoing catastrophe across historic Palestine that has reached an apotheosis of annihilation in Gaza and continues across the Palestinian territories. So we started before the current catastrophe, but kind of very much with a sense of an ongoing catastrophe and unfolding before all of our eyes. We believe in the capacity of literary and other narratives to countermap, by which we mean to imaginatively reconstruct, resiliently inhabit, and symbolically at least reclaim different cities across historic Palestine, by which we mean what Palestinians call both 1948 and 1967. We have a website, if you would like to visit that. If you put in Countermapping Urban Palestine, it should take you straight to that. Our pilot project focused on the inland city of Nablus in the so-called West Bank or Eastern Palestine. And we've been producing a map of that city's living heritage refracted through literary fiction, as well as diaspora memory and the kind of responses of people living on the ground as they're moving around the city. We locate and describe heritage sites across the historic centre of Old Nablus, which we can see here, and we can zoom in on the particular sites. So, for example, here we have the recently restored house where poet Fadwa Tukan grew up, and which she writes about in her memoir as a site of enforced seclusion as an upper-class woman in the 1930s and 40s, but also her resistant creativity, even though she was taken out of school and kind of confined to the house, as she puts it. So, you know, this is the site. We talk about the site in terms of its kind of historical information, but we also spend a lot of time exploring, like, how does the literature represent this particular place? To give you another example, this line here, Kan Atuja, there, the purple line, is a 16th century textile market where the protagonist of Isabella Hamad's novel, The Parisian, works in his father's shop. And this guy, who's called Mithat, he walks with his cousin from the Khan, from the shop, past the Ottoman clock tower here, and then he goes to Sheikh Hassim Cafe down here, which is the oldest extant coffee shop in Nablus. Our text, if you click on literary representation, shows how literary writing enables Indigenous, street level and domestic or inside out views of the old city that cannot be captured by these top-down maps. And importantly here, we're using a colonial map. This is the British Mandate map of Nablus, partly because it gives us a huge amount of detail, but also because we can then kind of track what's happened to buildings and sites and spaces in the city since then. But we're very aware of the fact that this is a kind of, you know, a violent technology that's being imposed upon Palestine from above. The literature kind of works from the ground up. The point here is exemplified. There's the Parisian, which I just mentioned, by Isabella Hamad. The point of the kind of bottom-up or inside-out perspective is exemplified by Nabulsi novelist Saha Khalife's Baba Saha, translated recently as Passage to the Plaza, whose Arabic title names a neighborhood near the Ottoman clock tower in which women are largely kind of confined to indoors, although one of them moves around at night as a midwife. But the women in the novel are, their relationship to the city is shaped both by gender codes and also by military occupation during the First Intifada. So the kind of the ways that they see the city and the spaces that they inhabit in the city of Nablus cannot possibly be captured by camera, or especially from top down. This is a very kind of introverted, inward-facing urban morphology or architecture. It could only really be seen and reimagined kind of from street and house level. So overall, we want to show how cities are practiced, read, recoded, and storied by Palestinians across a settler, colonial, occupied, and besieged geography in which the material fabric of cities is repeatedly damaged and destroyed. And this will sound very familiar to all of us who have been watching the kind of worst case of this, obviously, on our screens for the last 2 years. We're interested in cities as an intrinsic part of Palestinian culture, modernity, and memory, as Anne-Marie Jassier's new film Palestine 36 shows very clearly. But cities have sometimes been overshadowed by rural or Falahi heritage. So we want to bring the kind of urban history back into the frame. And in what follows, each of our very special and welcome guests are going to consider how imaginative literature might represent Palestinian urban life. Okay, so